So for me, what's interesting and what's exciting and what brings me to Web3 every day is the new thinking. Web3 can really transform the way people interact, engage, and conceive of poetry.
Hi everyone, welcome to yet another exciting episode of NewForum. And it's our pleasure to bring you amazing creators, visionaries, founders, and developers on our podcast. We're powered by NewCoin Foundation, and it's our aim to spark informative, educative, and human-centered conversations on the topics of crypto, the metaverse, NFT, and everything Web3, in order to ensure the conscious and ethical growth of a new web, embedding the values of care, freedom, and creativity.
And on today's episode of NewForum, we are super excited to have with us Ana Maria Caballero, the co-founder of theVerseverse. And we're going to talk with her about the path from Web2 Poet to Web3 Artist and Poet, as well as the theVerseverse.com project, Poetry NFT Gallery, where text is art, poetry is technology, and language is limitless. Hey Maria, we are super thrilled to have you on today.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you both for inviting me to be part of this podcast.
Amazing. So Maria, why don't we start off by you telling us yourself, a bit about yourself, your background, and how you became like a co-founder and also maybe a Web3 artist and poet.
Perfect. So I've been a poet basically since I learned how to write. I remember writing in 6th grade on the back of my school notebooks, to the point where my poems overtook my class notes and I'd have to go out and buy new notebooks for my classes. I enrolled in my first creative writing class in high school, and I culled those poems and sent them into my early action application to Harvard, where I was accepted and studied French, Spanish, and Italian literature. I was the only person in my concentration during the time that I was there, so I got to spend a lot of time with my professors, and I was, kind of surprised a little bit about all the complaints that I would hear about their tenured lives and how challenging the day-to-day existence as an academic was. So I decided that wasn't the path for me, even though they kept inviting me, come join us, come be a professor, devote your life to this. I went off and took on many communication-related jobs, all the while writing my poetry. But it wasn't until I stopped working when my son was born nearly 10 years ago that I really took a pause to organize all that I'd been writing, mostly in Spanish at the time, because I was living in Colombia, running international press for the Colombian vice president at the time, and I was writing in Spanish. And that collection, I sent it out to various open calls, and it ended up winning Colombia's national Jose Manuel Poetry Prize, Jose Manuel Arango National Poetry Prize. I was the first woman to win it. And it really was a very transformative moment in my life where I realized that my writing resonated with others. I'd written very much in private. So then I turned my attention to my writing in English that I'd also been, writing in private, and had files and files on my computer. And I sent those out, and I published 2 chapbooks. And I have a nonfiction manuscript actually coming out in October of 2022. It was awarded the Beverly International Prize and was a finalist for 5 other open call awards. So I'm really excited to bring this out into the world. It's a highly experimental, convulsive, segmented text that I think speaks to an age of interruptions, the reader always being interrupted. But even though I was, sharing my poetry and my writing and finding a way to get it out into the world, it always felt that the life of a published poem was just too short, and it was anticlimactic to publish. All the work, years can go into getting one poem out into the world. And once it was out in the world, like I wanted a party, I wanted a celebration, like I wanted balloons to go off. And it was all so quiet and lonely. And I spent a lot of my life in Miami, and I saw how Art Basel transformed Miami into, this really just thriving cosmopolitan mecca that it now is. And I was always curious as to why poetry wasn't part of that art party. And when I read about Web3, in spring of 2021, just 1 year ago, it all clicked inside me that Web3 could give poetry a new kind of transactability, which it didn't have, I think, before. And also, I've been turning my poems into video, audio poems on social media. And I thought I could definitely take this further, experiment more with visual forms, with audio forms, and really find a place for poetry at the art table. And to speak the language of digital audiences too. I was also really keen on learning. I felt and still do that I have so much to learn about the creation of digital artworks, about the past that text-based art form has in the art world. But it was a beautiful sort of parting of the seas, and I knew exactly where to go. And even before I really understood what the blockchain was or the technology that underlies, NFTs, I bought the domain for theVerseverse. I just the name popped in my head, and I knew that was the name of the gallery, because I wanted to create a poetry gallery. I'm I'm going to create a gallery where I'm going to put the poems of all my friends and turn them into beautiful visual art, and we're going to sell poetry as art. And that's what I wanted to do with the theVerseverse. And I was, sort of writing up pitches for it, and I pitched it to a couple of domainer friends who understood that Web3 world. And no one really got what I wanted to do, and they thought it was an interesting idea, but not more than that probably. But then I was invited to be part of a project called Ether Poems, launched by a big name in the NFT space, which is Artchick. Many people follow her, and she created this project which was on-chain poetry, which basically means that the actual verse is minted onto the Ethereum blockchain. So I was invited to be part of this project, and it was an immersive 3-4 week crash course in NFTs. I learned how to maneuver Discord. I dusted off my Twitter account. I'd mostly been on Instagram the previous years. I met incredible poets and writers and artists in the space. I learned about drops and gas and all these terms that were new to me. And then I also met 2 women writers in the space, Callan Iwamoto and Sasha Stiles, and I invited them to be part of the project. And fortunately, they said yes. And, we took this sort of very infant idea and, proposal and turned it into what today is the theVerseverse together. So that's basically in a little bit more than a nutshell how I got started.
Yeah, you are the first poet that I think we've had on NewForum, and most of the time we have visual artists, and when we think about poetry, we think about at least the first thing I think about is literature, and so, but it is art. And I really like that on your Twitter page it says poetry NFT gallery where text is art, poetry is technology, plus language is limitless. I think that's really powerful, and I like that the space is really diverse, and this idea that I guess the blockchain technology is really getting more friendly, and as it's evolving, I think there's just a lot of possibilities where we're not limited to just this one concept of what art should be. And so I really like appreciate the sort of like the niche or the space that you're in. And I wanted to also ask, like, when it comes to NFTs, right? Like there's this concept of NFTs becoming like a hype or so. How do you feel about that, you know, in Web3? Because Web3 is not yet mainstream, but NFTs have gone mainstream, and it's sort of like connected to the work you do. So do you have any thoughts on that?
For me, you know, I don't really pay attention on a daily basis to what the charts look like, what the market's doing. As a poet, you know, poets don't get paid for their work, really. When you publish a poem, it's not like when you sell a painting. When you publish a poem, usually you've actually paid the journal to read it. You pay a submission fee. And then you, most often than not, you do not get paid to publish it. So it's not like I'm expecting, you know, income from poetry. I haven't my whole life. Even books that sell, you know, the sales aren't sufficient. So for me, what's interesting and what's exciting and what brings me to Web3 every day is the new thinking. Web3 can really transform the way people interact, engage, and conceive of poetry. I mean, of course, there's always a history behind us of people who've been pushing the boundaries, who've been innovating, who've been really challenging ideas of what people think poetry is. But it's not something mainstream, you know, since you use the word, it's not a mainstream event. And I'm really wondering if via Web3, which has so much energy right now and so many eyes on it, we could perhaps get to that tipping point with poetry where digital poems are valued, curated, collected, exhibited, transacted, just like digital art. So for me, I'm not really concerned, to be honest, about what the market does. Of course, I want the poems in the gallery to sell, but we still have poets and artists wanting to work with the VerseVerse, irregardless of what's happening in the market, because I think they just want to be part of what could be considered a movement, a collective that's really devoted to transforming and expanding how some people, you know, who love poetry might conceive of it. We want to nurture this generation of collectors of poetry, because it's probably the first time that people can really collect poetry outside of book form.
I feel like this also sounds super exciting because, you know, a book you can always buy, but if you have an NFT, like a poem, it's your, like, it can be yours. It's like, you can make it the only one. And that's, I think, is super exciting that there's not this copy mechanism. And we know that you've been part of some recent literary prizes and artist residencies. And now I'm wondering if you could tell us about how was your experiences and which ones you've been represented by.
Sure. Well, I wanted to share that I've recently, as in this morning, signed a contract with Valparaíso Editores, probably the best poetry press working in the Spanish language, to reprint my book in Spanish called From Sunday to Sunday, Entre Domingo y Domingo, which was the book that I published in Colombia. And I'm really excited to be working with this press and to bring it out into the world in a big way. And yeah, we signed the contract this morning, so it's very exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, beyond NFTs or the world of Web3, there really is a devotion to poetry sort of in my daily life, and it feels really good to have sort of both options, to be able to turn my poems into digital poems, but to also hope to see them in book form. And I think that I think it's something to keep in mind as we navigate Web3, that one thing doesn't preclude the other. You can be an artist with exhibits in the real world and hoping to have gallery shows while pursuing NFTs. You know, we can write books and have books of paper in the world and also make digital poems. And it's wonderful to be able to have feet in both lands. And a few weeks ago, I think 2 weeks ago, my forthcoming manuscript, AA PETIT MAL, which is my nonfiction book, was the first runner-up for the Kurt Brown Prize, which is awarded by the Association of Writers and Poets in the US. So that was also very exciting news. I've been having some good news lately, and it's very rewarding to be seen by your peers, your fellow writers. So I've been very grateful for that.
I'm really glad that your hard work is paying off, because sometimes you're putting a lot of, the passion, because you're doing this because you care about it, you're passionate about it, and it's not just about like the money and all that stuff. However, it's nice when you're recognized by your peers and there's some sort of recognition and acknowledgement. So I'm really glad that, it's happening and this is your season. And I'm excited for all the amazing, opportunities that are going to come your way. And I really also like when you touched a bit on this idea of like, NFTs or technology isn't necessarily replacing like the traditional form of like poetry or even like art, right? And so just for our, I'd say the community members who are still learning about Web3, what would you say is the difference between traditional poet and the possibilities that Web3 can open up for like poets or like the poetry space, I'd say?
I think for me, Web3 is a space where collaboration is very strong, and that's been fascinating to engage in. I've had the opportunity to work with incredible artists with whom I'm launching beautiful, beautiful spoken word NFTs. One already exists on Super Rare. It's with Octavio Irving, who is, one of the best artists working in Cuba today. He's widely recognized as a maestro in Cuba. And we collaborated on a poem called Mujeres, Women, which tells the story of the women of my family. And it's accompanied by his stunning, beautiful visuals. It's like a cinematic, I think, 3-minute long spoken word experience. And then I've also had the pleasure of working with an artist like Joelle Snipe, who used my voice. And she does visuals for some of the top DJs in the world. She's amazing. And she used voice recordings of my poems to generate visuals. And we have a poem called The Public, which was exhibited in Brussels in the Core Music Festival. And we're going to be launching this in July in the 1-for-1 Tezos event, one of ones. So this one's coming up soon. And then I also have a more playful poem called Bathroom Talk, which is a collaboration with a musician, actually, a Polish musician who reached out to me, and I thought his work was so cool. He goes by Cut Up Banana. His name is Mikal. And Adam Disbrow, who's one of the top abstract artists working in the NFT space. And it's a 3-way collaboration, very exciting, on this poem called Bathroom Talk, which just kind of describes an intimate scene with my husband, like in the bathroom getting ready. Very playful little poem. And then I have a work coming out with Gala Mirisa, who is from Barcelona. She's an incredible, incredible artist. She's done NFT covers of Elle magazine. I mean, really special what she's accomplished. And we are going to be working on, it's almost ready, on my first NFT poem in Spanish. So far I've only launched poems in English, but with Gala, we'll be launching one in Spanish. So that's exciting also to work in new languages, for so far. So I think that none of this would have happened if I had just stayed in the traditional realm. Entering Web3 has opened all these doors of opportunity for me and For example, my poem with Octavio Irving, Mujeres, is going to be exhibited this weekend in a Web3 conference in New York. So, we were selected. A curator reached out to us and said, we want to exhibit your poem, your artwork. And we said, yes, of course. And, poems don't usually get curated into shows. So this is, I think, the example of the opportunity and the collaboration of Web3.
How many poems a day do you usually write? It's just like really interesting to me. I just want to know, and then I go on to my real question that I have for you.
Well, some days I don't write anything, and some days I write many. There's two different things as an author. There's writing and there's authoring. Writing is like the creation, and then the authoring is that process by which you get your poems out into the world, which is submitting, editing. Editing can be considered writing, I guess, because it's rewriting, it's sitting down and quiet with the texts, it's organizing manuscripts, it's composing cover letters, query letters. All that takes a lot of time, finding opportunities. So I also like to write articles sometimes, kind of op-ed type pieces, and I'm often writing one of those. So I think that it's hard to say like how many poems I write a day, but I'm always interacting with the poems I've written. This morning, I happened to have written a poem, and I happened to have submitted a manuscript that I'm currently shopping around for a publisher. So that's an example of just a specific day. And then here I am talking with you about poetry. So that to me also counts as authoring.
I think it's so inspiring to see how somebody like you, like a poet or an artist, does their work and how they have their rituals with what they're doing. And really interesting how you explained it to me. And I'm also wondering right now, what do you think is like going to be the future for creators and maybe especially poets? What are the most exciting tools and things in the future from Web3 that you look out for?
I really think it's going to be exciting how we divorce the art from the market. I'm really interested in seeing how the art can like take its own discourse and not be so tied to the rise and fall of a currency, because it should be so independent from it. So I think the NFTs need to evolve beyond crypto. They're just, I mean, it's not NFT art, it's not NFT poetry, it's just art, it's just poetry. We are just transacting it via the blockchain like we would transact it via a book. It's one more way of engaging with an art form, which is great. The more the merrier. So I think that's going to happen because the kind of work that's being created is really stupendous. And there's really thoughtful organizations like Vertical Crypto, like Gazeli, like Lal Art Advisory, who are involved in this curation. Eleonora Breezy is another woman who's been here doing incredible things. Kadaf also needs to be mentioned, Studio As We Are, all incredible organizations devoted to elevating digital art, irregardless of what happens in the markets. And so I think that the more we push in that direction, the better the markets will do, actually, ironically, because then we can abandon a little bit the discourse of sort of the casino side to NFTs, right? Which we can't ignore. It's there. But I think that as soon as that we abandon that discourse in favor for the cultural currency that we're creating, and the new transactability that we're giving digital artists and digital poets, the stronger the future will be. The quicker we'll get there, because I have no doubt that we will get there.
I think the metaverse is on everybody's lips at the moment. I'm wondering how is that going to impact your work? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think it'll be interesting to see how we can incorporate more exhibitions, more events, more readings in the metaverse. For example, we have a really exciting event during NFT NYC with the Bowery Poetry Club and Marcos de la Fuente, who is an incredible Spanish poet, AI poet. And he's one of the organizers of the Kerouac Festival, which is also international. They have it in Mexico and they have it in New York. And Marcos and his team have done so much to really educate students. He goes to schools in New York about what can be done with AI and poetry. And we have an event with them during NFT NYC in which we'll not only be performing in the Bowery Poetry, but also in the Bowery Poetry's Metaverse extension. So we'll be, in the virtual and in the real realms. And that allows people who can't be there physically to also participate. And I really love that because I think that it's not enough to just live virtually. Being out in the world is so important, of course, and meeting real people and hearing each other's voices. But it's obviously a plus if we can grant audiences who can't physically be there an opportunity to participate.
I like that you touched on the fact that in a way there should be a balance, right? Because we're physical beings and we live in the physical. And so how do you perceive it? Do you think that the future of the metaverse is just going to be advanced technology and enhancing our physical lifestyles, or it's just going to be this digital space like Decentraland or these other spaces where you can actually go and immerse yourself?
For me, I really just adhere to the thought, to the principle that for me the metaverse Web3 is new thinking. It's just opening ourselves to new thinking, and what that will look like is going to be, I think, very subjective. I'm not really sure that we can say the metaverse is this and that applies to everyone. Maybe for someone, the metaverse is Decentraland and they love it and they hang out with their friends there and, they go to art parties there or gaming parties or whatever they enjoy. And that's completely valid. And that is a complete, a whole definition of metaverse. Metaverse for you, metaverse for me might mean different things. They should mean different things, just like it's almost like what do you want to do with your life? Well, I'd like to be a teacher, or I'd like to be a student, or I'd like to be a writer or an artist. Well, design the reality that you most desire. You can also design the meta reality that you most desire, and it's up to us to sort of build what we wish. There wasn't really anything for poetry, so it was something that I wanted to build. And I see other people building. I mean, obviously someone like Vertical Crypto and what they've built is really spectacularly inspiring, because they're creating a metaverse based on principles of inclusivity and of artist first principles. So it really is up to us. I mean, you look at Right Click Save, for example, Art Gnome's publication, and you see that they're building ideas, and they're building thought, and they're building culture around the metaverse. They're building questions, which I also have to give it to the editor, Alex Estoriak, because I think they're really putting questions out there. They're not looking to be the answer, they're looking to be the question. And I think that takes courage to just say, we don't know everything, but here, let's gather the questions, let's ask them in an intelligent way, and hopefully we'll answer them, eventually together. So yeah, I think it's very subjective to say what the metaverse is going to be, and very limiting also to define it strictly.
That's a really powerful perspective that you've nicely articulated here. And I think that perhaps a subjective approach is probably the way to go, because we've had amazing guests who have shared different perspective, and I think, like you said, for some people it's partying in the metaverse, in that immersive space, and for some people it's that extension, that enhancement, to our real life is kind of what excites them. But I think, however it's going to be, I think in a couple of years we will really find out, right? Because the technology is still evolving, and when it comes to Web3 and all these tools, it's really about the potential, right? Because it's still new and it's still growing, and we're all trying to understand it. And like you are pioneering it for poetry, I think that's really unique and really special. And yeah, I thank you so much for your time, Anna. I really appreciate all your insights. It's been really informative and very educative. And I like that Web3 is so diverse, right? And everyone can be a part of it. And I think this is going to be a great episode for our community and anyone who comes across it. And I'm wondering, where can our community members as well as like listeners find you on your social platform?
Sure. So my Twitter account is Caballero Ana Ma, Ana with one N, Caballero with two L's. And on Instagram, I'm Ana Maria Caballero. And then anamariacaballero.com is my website.
Thank you so much, Anna. It was such an honor and pleasure to have you on today. And I can't wait to see where the world for the poets is going in Web3. And thank you for everyone who tuned in today into this episode of NewForum. If you also want to get more involved in what we are doing, make sure to follow us on IG, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok. We are NewForum_N0 and also NewCoin. And we also have a Discord group, so don't forget to join us there and join the Web3 conversation. We're going to leave all the links as well as Anna's links in the bio. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and we see you in the next episode of NewForum. And thank you, Anna, and thank you, Salimi. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bathroom talk. Watching you pee in front of me while we talk about not being late. It's true. We shouldn't be late to things. I try to remember when we began peeing and talking in front of each other. I wish I could remember. I would tell you. I wish I had to pee so that I could see if you looked, see if you question any less what I am about to say, which is everyone already expects us to be late. So maybe we all together just stopped being late.